Jingiwala and Jinagay, which means hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. And my name is Babani Robin Bancroft. I am of Bunjalung, Gumbanga, Dungari descent, and I'm speaking to you from the traditional country of my grandmothers here in the Washpool. The Washpool runs into the Clarence River and it's in northern New South Wales, northeastern New South Wales.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your early education experience? From you're just saying that you grew up here.
Yes, not far from where we're sitting is our old house, and from that old house we went to school at Baryugal. My grandfather, old Pa Bancroft, he would be like a mail run for the school kids. There was myself, there was Carol Wilson, there was Rex Marshall, my brother Sonny, Greg Harrington, Richard Harrington, and a couple of other people. And my grandfather would pick us up in his little old car and take us into school at Baryugal. He'd drop us off in the morning and then he'd come and pick us up. This was our weekly, daily routine.
What was school like for you in those days?
School in the early days was okay. Um, my mother's sister, Carol Wilson, she she would always come first in the class, always, and I'd be 5 points behind her coming second. Used to frustrate me. I could never beat her. She always came first. Doesn't matter what grade we were in. And it's only by 5 points she'd beat me or something. But school was interesting, and at Baryugal School we had pretty important Guri people, Aboriginal people, First Nations people going there. And as Rex Marshall, my mother's brother, he went on to get an Order of Australia medal for working with the community. Carol Marshall, my mother's sister, she went on to get an Order of Australia medal for teaching at Baryugal for 33 years. I'm still here, attached to Southern Cross. So, but I think positively, very positively about Southern Cross. Yes. So that's the school at Baryugal. And we've had some very important Aboriginal people, Guri people, go through Baryugal School. It's only a little place that you've hardly ever heard of, and it's in the back of Whoop Whoop. 62 miles from Grafton. So you're in the middle of Casino and Grafton practically. And it was all a dirt road in those days, dirt road. And you'd have one teacher who taught from first class to sixth class. And from then you had to go on to high school. Yes. So that's where the informative years came from there. But then we all had to go wherever our parents, where our father found work. He always worked. Like all the men of his time and era, they always worked. When places closed down, like cattle stations, they ran out of work to do. The men would look for work elsewhere. And so Mum would pack up us kids, her little tribe, and we'd follow wherever my father was working. And so that meant another school. But we finally turned around and went back to Barnooks, known as Barnooks too, Barnooks, I think, Barnooks. And from there, we went to school, caught the bus from there to Grafton. 62 miles into town and 62 miles home. So that's what, 104 miles a day. That's just travelling to get to school, because my parents firmly believed that the only way forward for their children was an education. Now, we went without a lot. I mean, my mother used to make little patty cakes and would sell them for 5 cents or something, and scones, so that we could pay for myself to go to school at a place called St. Mary's. And that was run by the Catholic nuns. And the dear Catholic nuns would like you to contribute sixpence a month or something for the starving kids in Africa. I used to get so frustrated and angry. I was only a first year student, that we'd have to turn up with this money for the starving kids when we were starving ourselves. You know, just having fried scones and travelling all the way that we did.
So from Grafton, how did your education develop after high school?
From Grafton, there was nothing left for people around my age at that time in the 60s, only to be domestics or, you know, and I didn't want to be a domestic. So I went nursing on Wickham Terrace in Brisbane. And while I was on Wickham Terrace in Brisbane, I met my husband, who had just done his agriculture degree. And I ended up going to Papua New Guinea and lived up there for many years. I've got 3 children, and my children went to primary school and secondary school in Papua New Guinea before we returned to Australia and took up where my family is, and my extended family, doing all the heritage and cultural heritage and contacts within the communities. Everything that's important to be an Aboriginal person in your community. I came back thinking that because I'd lived through Papua New Guinea becoming independent, I thought that things in Australia would be good for the Aboriginal people. I was sadly mistaken, because they weren't. So that was a very big disappointment, and we've still got a long way to go for Guri people in Australia. I decided that I wanted to do some more studies, because I was always whinging and moaning to my family here about treatment of Aboriginal people. And they got tired of me whinging and moaning, and they said, well, get in there and do something and make a difference. So I worked for government, working on Aboriginal projects and programs for many years, did some wonderful things which communities around Australia benefited from. It wasn't just my community here on the northeast coast, it was every state and territory. A project that I did, the Aboriginal communities benefited from. When I came back from PNG, I went to Canberra and got into policy and projects and programs. So I worked hard to make some of these effective. And you don't do that overnight. It takes you 5 to 7 years to do something, to make it successful. And I'm very pleased to say that I got childcare centres around Australia, 40 multifunctional Aboriginal children's centres, called MACS, MACS, and I had the good support of a team, but I had the especially good support of a lady called Flora MacDonald. She was Scottish, and being Scottish and in government and an accountant, she knew where government hid all its money. So that's what we used to establish um, Aboriginal childcare centres in Australia. I'm very proud of that, and there's still, maybe I haven't checked, but at least 30, 35 are still going in every state and territory. Very, couldn't have done it without Flora MacDonald. The reason that we put in Aboriginal kids is that childcare centres were supposed to keep one spot for an Aboriginal kid in their childcare centres, which they didn't do. So we had to form our own, and it was actually recognised by government at Parliament House, which called us up to say what a wonderful job you did and everything. We involved parents, aunties and uncles to come into the MACS to talk to the little kids and tell them yarns about when they were kids. And these people, these Guri people, the grandparents, the uncles and aunties, once a month would take the little kids out for a walk around the place and show them a site and talk about an Aboriginal site. I was so happy about it. It was a way forward, and it involved the community, and they were pleased to be involved. And in those days, I was a different person to what I am now. I was spot on, little suit, briefcase, high heels, black stockings, everything. And, it's a bit of a buzz when you get acknowledged by the Prime Minister for what you've achieved. And so after that, I thought, I can't stay home and do nothing. What's my next step? So I decided to go to ANU.
What did you do at ANU?
At ANU, I applied to do archaeology and physical anthropology. Because I wasn't getting any scholarships or support and had a little family, I found a job at the Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island Studies in the Aboriginal Studies Press section. And my job there was as a research person. And we were doing the Encyclopedia of Aboriginal Australia. And we also were doing the map of Aboriginal Australia, which you may have seen. I hope that most schools and universities and libraries have seen it. A lot of hard work went into that. The person who was the head of Aboriginal Studies Press was a person called David Horton, Dr. David Horton, and a staff of about 10. Now, those 10, I was the only Aboriginal person there that worked full-time from 2 or 3 days a week. But when you say that, of course you do more, a lot more. And I was also studying at the time. It was hard times, but it was enjoyable. It was lovely. And I went on a couple of digs, of course, and was all involved in heritage. And the Australian government had a big conference in Washington, D.C. on tangible and intangible cultural heritage. So they got 40 people from 40 Indigenous, meaning local people, from 40 countries around the world who were involved in cultural heritage. And somehow the government picked me because they'd heard that I'd been doing all of that. And I thought, wow, a trip to Washington, D.C., to the Smithsonian. I'm way out of my depth there, way out of my depth. But because I was nominated by the communities, the Aboriginal communities nominated me, so they picked me. God, what a shock and what an honour, to go all the way over there with one representative from each country that had like Ainu, Navajos, Hopis, all the people around the
Mm.
world, Indigenous people.
The map we utilise a lot at Ginibi. It's part of most of our units utilise the map.
Excellent.
Um,
That's good to hear. I love hearing that because that's what the map was all about and the encyclopedia. To get into the schools, into the universities, into the libraries. We wanted a rerun. Well, we, meaning we, the group of 10 under David Horton, we wanted to do a rerun because we sold out completely and there were still things to put in a rerun. Kathy Freeman's winnings, 100 things had happened since the launch. And so myself and Flora, we became an Australians for Reconciliation coordinators for the ACT. I was practically clawing my way out of Canberra. I was there a long time, many years, and so while I was doing the Australians for Reconciliation, our job was to go into each state and territory, and we had communities nominate what they'd like in their state for a symbol of reconciliation. An example is Myall Creek. That was done. And so while I'm over in Western Australia looking for what their symbol could be with the communities over there, I got a call from home here in northeast New South Wales saying, hey, Robin, there's a job here for you. And I said, what? And they said, you've got to apply because it closes next week. I said, but I've got to go to Queensland and uh, Northern Territory yet on my contract. And they said, give them a ring. It was the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Officer for State Forests, New South Wales. So while I was in Perth, I rang them, State Forests, up, and I said, uh, this job that you've got in my northeastern New South Wales, I said, when does it close, the application? And they said, this week. And I said, but I want to apply for it. And they said, well, and I told them my circumstances, still travelling. And they said, when you come back, apply for it. And a few of us applied for it. But when we came back and I applied for it, I was fortunate enough to get it. And I enjoyed it immensely. I worked with all the land councils in northeast New South Wales, from Maxville to Tweed to Tenterfield, and all in between along the coast. Um, so there's a lot of communities in this area, and that's a lot of negotiation and liaison that had to be done. And once you can do that, you're halfway there. My job in forests with a guy from Urunga, Richard Kelly, he was also the male cultural heritage Guri officer in forests for our area, and excellent mentor, taught me all of everything practically. Him and another fellow from Casino called Bob Corwell. He was they were so good, and so I loved working in state forests. And while I was in state forests, state forests were very supportive of me, and they would let me have one day a month to take out school kids to show them sites in state forests, show them scar trees, show them rock shelters, show them. That takes a bit of organising and arranging. You don't just barge into someone's private property. So it'll take me a while to arrange that, and then take the school teachers out. And it was playing it forward. School teachers could then tell their students, and the students could go home and tell their grandmothers or their aunties and uncles or family members who didn't know about where sites were and stuff. So I played that forward, and then during the time of working for State Forest, and my mother was pretty sick, and she was doing this religious course, theology course, and of course after the nuns, I never wanted to do anything, but I had to drive my mother to these meetings with all these churchy things that she was going to. Desi Williams' mum, Auntie Jessie, yeah, and so when Mum died, they said, "Oh, we need you here." I'm a sucker. Yeah, so anyway, I ended up joining the Catholic Elders group, and we had to do a theology course at Nungalinya. Nungalinya is in Darwin, and it's a Aboriginal community college, and theology was one part of it. Nungalinya broke down. It was only blocks, you know, how you go on blocks. So I would take holidays off from State Forest to do my block work. And then Nungalinya were having government problems, and so they sent it all over to Wantolp. Wantolp is in Cairns, and that's where you finish off your diploma or whatever it is in theology. So that's what I did there also. And then I thought, oh, what next? So when I finished with State Forest, the next step was, must have been a couple of weeks, and I'm sitting there thinking, what's going on in the way of education in northern New South Wales? And I had an uncle, Rex Marshall, who was involved with Southern Cross a lot. He spoke so highly of it, and I was still in government when he was speaking about Southern Cross and the potential for Aboriginal students. So I came back up, and I thought, oh, well, maybe this might be the way to go. So then I said, yes, keep the brain active while I still can before anything else develops. And so I thought, oh, I want to do something. And I thought, I think I can contribute. And where I'd like to contribute is getting cultural heritage back to the students and to the adult communities. And the thing that's been missing in all of this are the massacres in the northeast area. People have heard about Myall Creek, they've heard about Coniston, but have they heard about the biggest massacre in Australia on the Urara River, just down on the Urara River runs into the Clarence? Yes, 300 people minimum pot-shotted by the Native Police and the Crown Lands Commissioner and all of those. And this is recorded, so if anyone doesn't believe me, they can go and do their own research and look it up. I'm sure others will do it in the future, and that's good for them. They can do it. Long overdue for doing that. But we've got about 10, 15 massacres in the northeast region of New South Wales. Yes. And it's all been hush hush, Paul, all been very quiet. And why do you think it's been very quiet?
I have no idea.
It's because those involved were the squatters and the colonisers, the bad colonisers. There were some good ones, I must say. But the squatters, they were out to grab our land. by any means possible. Shooting, poisoning, anything. Same happened here where we're sitting here, and we've got a squatter who came and built his own castle, would you believe it, after he was involved in massacres. So what I'm doing, thanks to Southern Cross, who have supported me on this and backed me, is I'm doing research into this now, into the massacres of the northeast region. Now, there have been some people who have done some stuff. That's good. Every little bit helps. Every bit that everyone's done, it all contributes. But there hasn't been someone doing it from an Guri, from an Aboriginal perspective. And I knew that the only way that I could do that would be to go through Southern Cross, that had a Southern Cross elders group, Southern Cross lecturers, head of department. Thank you, Stuart. Very important to me to be in that environment, to do what I'm trying to do now. And that's where I'm at this moment.
So part of that though is that you're actually doing your master's degree
Yes,
by research.
yes,
So and this research into the Northern Rivers massacres is part of that research project.
yes. So I've gone back to school, and that's only because of Southern Cross. I'm very happy to be involved with Southern Cross. I was very happy to hear that there was an elders group there. I was very happy to hear that people were involved with Aboriginal students. And I thought, oh, this is maybe a place to look into further. And then I went over to Jinibee Centre, and I bugged the Chief Executive Officer there, Stuart Barlow, and I kept bugging him and bugging him and bugging him. And here I am today, still trying to do research for my master's on massacres in northeastern New South Wales, mainly the Clarence River, because that is my area. So, and besides that, I'd be dead before I could do all the massacres in the whole of northeast New South Wales. And there have been, that I know of, 2 or 3 or 4 mentions of the massacres in books of this area. And the kids at school say, but we've got nothing. Nannies, grandfathers, grandmothers, aunties, uncles say, we know it's happened. And they said there's nothing written down for them to read in the libraries. So I've spent a lot of time in the libraries and the historical societies and talking to the older white people who are receptive, asking, do you have any stories to tell me about your grandparents, how they got on with Guri people? Well, for a while there, they wouldn't say anything, but I'd keep going back to them because I knew that they had stories. They were older people there, yes. So eventually I got a few stories. Yeah. People won't like it, and they certainly won't like it when I start writing about the murdering squatters who kept everything, because they were all related, the murdering squatters who poisoned and shot all our mob, well, most of our mob, a lot. Even here where I'm sitting, my grandmother's tribe was massacred here. So,
Okay, take a breath.
yes, by the squatter and his men and the native police and the Crown Lands Commissioners. They formed their own vigilante squads, and they just went on shooting and poisoning and murdering campaigns. vigilantes they were. But a few of us survived, and thank God we did. And how did we survive? We hid, my grandmother's people. We hid out here in the mountains. That's how we survived. And that's why we're here today. And also my grandmother, who was born 150 years ago, my grandmother, when people talk about their grandmother, they're talking about the 1920s or the 1930s or the 1940s. I'm talking about the late 1800s, 1890s, you know, when all of this was, my great-grandmother was involved in this stuff. So it's still very raw, and until we get it out there so that the kids coming through, not only my kin, but all the kids coming through will have something there, and they then can do their own research. They can go to uni and do their own research. The support at uni for the kids today is amazing. Yes. I wish I would have had this support, you know, elsewhere. But Southern Cross has got a huge support team for any Aboriginal kid coming through today. And they'll come through and they'll look at the work that's been done and maybe at my research, and they'll have different stories. That's okay. Fine. Any story is okay. But this is a story that I've spent 25 years researching. It's just getting started.
And that's and I think the research that you're doing is extremely important and obviously quite personal as well. So thanks for sharing that. One of the things that has come in as we step forward from there is you mentioned the Guinevere Elders, and we're excited that you're now part of that. How did you become a part of the Guinevere Elders, and what does that mean for you?
Well, that's an honour to be a part of the Guinevere Elders. And three quarters of them I knew before I even went over there, and they were always talking about their elders and you should join and you should join. And with knew Auntie Bertha and Auntie Irene and Uncle Greg and, you know, the elders there who were saying you should join up because you can tell stories about your area and contribute to it. And I thought, okay. So I threw my hat in the ring. I don't know how it went from there, but it must have gone through the elders. Now, they're a fantastic lot of elders, and they contribute. They've all got something to say. And this is the beauty of working with elders. And the elders who are Southern Cross Guinevere elders, they all think that they're very important. And the big thing is they they are all treated with respect. Now that's made the difference, the respect that's been shown to the elders. Otherwise there'd be no elders there if there was no respect shown to them. And the respect has been there, and I'm glad to be a part of the elders. See, it's not just research material found in libraries or on Trove or in historical societies. It is oral history that's very important, Aboriginal oral history. And what I try to do a lot of the time is join that up with the written whitefella history. That's what I try to do, because I know there's still that you could get a lot of flack from whitefellas by saying, you know, I'm saying, well, your history was an oral history once before you wrote it all down. Our oral history is just as important to us, and we want to further that for a good reason, of course. There'll be a lot of flack coming out of it, I'm sure, especially if I take on all the squatters' descendants. But the thing is, what the squatters' descendants have to understand, it's not having a go at them. It's letting them know what their grandfathers and great-grandfathers did. But it won't be me finishing this story. It will be my kids or my grandkids doing it, or the kids or the grandkids that are coming through universities now. And at Southern Cross, we have a couple of hundred students there.
700.
700. How fantastic is that? That does the heart good, really, to know that our kids are coming through and they're questioning things. They're not sitting back like people my age. We'd sit back and we'd listen to non-Indigenous people say the most stupid and ridiculous things, absolutely ridiculous, and then they'd praise their ancestors, who we knew from our oral history were nothing but murderers, with their shotguns and their poison flower. And even just up down the road here, well, not so far away, there's a bit in one of the books about poison flower. That's why I am really looking forward to this truth-telling, Stuart, that I know Southern Cross is going to be very involved in. You know, it's just another way of looking at things. And what can you do? You've got all this wonderful oral history from the elders, the Jinibee elders, Southern Cross elders. They've all got a story to tell, all of them.
Absolutely.
But I've got to thank you, Stuart, for what you're doing for Southern Cross. It's really appreciated. You mightn't think so, and we mightn't be, what do you call it, effervescent, bubbly about it, but we elders really appreciate what you're doing, and we really appreciate the respect that's shown to us as elders. That's very important. I can't stress it enough, because if you've got no respect, we may as well not be there.